Okay, so we're back after our emergency,
Hmm.
right? Okay, so you were,
And then I went to law school
yeah.
and got out and started writing a trial practice for the public defender. So
Hmm.
I quit that after 2 years and formed my own business, and it grew over time. After 42 years, because I had saved and worked hard,
Yeah.
uh, I was able to quit and go do volunteer work. So at age 68, of course, I had to work longer because I didn't have a pension. So
Mm.
uh, I, at 68, I said, I'm going to go do what I really like. And I'd been a backpacker for 30 years. Once a year, I'd go out and do a 10-day hike and
Mm.
9 to 12,000 feet in the West, and stuff like that. So I said, I'm
Mhm.
going to go join. And I like Bend, Oregon. It's the prettiest town I've ever seen.
Hmm.
Moved out to Bend, Oregon, applied for search and rescue there, and was fortunate enough to get admitted at 68,
Wow.
and then I did that for 8 years. So in that, I had some medical training. Oregon has a pretty strict regimen. You're not allowed to be a search and rescue person unless you go through a academy and all that
Wow.
stuff. And part of it's medical.
Okay.
So I took the more difficult medical class, and I thought, and it's okay, but I
Hmm.
didn't keep it up. But then after 8 years, I came here to Flatland, Florida,
Yeah.
and then joined search and rescue here. Totally different, but
Yes.
I wanted to learn how to do it differently.
Right.
So, uh, and here everybody's on the search and rescue is like an EMT or a paramedic
Hmm.
or something. And if they're not, they're gonna be.
Right.
And so they said, why don't you just go to school? I said, okay. And
Why not?
so I looked into it, and I'll talk about that later. But then I came to this school,
Okay.
and I looked at the different ways to become an EMT
Hmm.
and what it would take, and I think the duration of the training is pretty similar. But so I came here,
Okay.
and I've been studying hard.
And I think you said this was going to be the last school you ever attend.
I'm 77. I've always
Yes.
done well in school,
Yeah.
and I don't want
Just
to
don't
have
want to
to
do it
study
anymore.
like this
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
But I will. I'm very interested in the 30 hours to maintain your competency.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
believe in that strongly. I've had that
Absolutely.
in all my careers. I've had that.
Yes.
Mandatory
Continuing education.
continuing
Yeah.
education. Yeah.
So, after you get your EMT, which you're getting ready to take your final here pretty soon,
Mhm.
what is your goal? Like, what do you want? Where do you want to work?
Well, I think the clinicals were fascinating. I think they
Yes.
were so important to see
Hmm.
the diversity. I
Right.
didn't realize EMTs could get jobs in these other places.
Yeah, you don't have to work on an ambulance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've been in an ambulance for over 100 hours in
Hmm.
the last year with search and rescue,
Right.
but I don't want that kind of shift,
Right.
12-hour, 24-hour at this stage of my life,
Right.
because
I
I
don't
am
blame you.
retired.
Right.
I've earned the right to retire.
Yes, you have, sir.
And so the mental health hospital was
Hmm.
fascinating. Or,
So you
got to
saw value
interview.
in that.
Hmm?
You saw value
Oh, I
in going to
definitely
that.
saw value in
That's
that
awesome.
because I've seen people before, but not that frequently,
Okay.
who had
Hmm.
altered mental
Right.
consciousness. Yeah, and also it was more promising than I thought because there were a number of people there that came in and said, "Hey, I need help.
Yes.
My life is going wrong. I can't handle it. I need help." So that was really
It
interesting.
was positive, I'm sure, to see
Yeah,
somebody actually taking the initiative to make things better for themselves
they
instead of being
were.
forced to do it.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. There were people that got picked up,
Hmm.
but they had voluntarily come in with the people that picked them up.
Yeah. Right.
And I remember this one person in particular, and she just wanted help, and she was
Yeah.
so nice. I mean,
Yeah.
when you think of mental hospital, you think one
I
flew
know.
over the cuckoo's nest,
Right.
you know.
And for those who don't know, you might have to Google that, but yes.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. But you think of crazy people,
Right, right.
you know, and so that I thought was important. Then I got 2 ambulance ride type jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I got a emergency room, which I thought was totally fascinating. I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was going to go into a place with blood on the walls and
Oh my
floors,
gosh.
and I actually saw, you know, what
Yeah.
they do and how they
Right.
do it and how quickly and all their
Yeah.
procedures. And I was fortunate enough to get to do some extra things, so I texted my teacher Rick and said, you know, they want me to do these things. What do you
Right.
think? And so he sends me a text that was like that long, and it really helped. And I
Nice.
showed it to them because they said they didn't want me to do things my teacher didn't want me
Right.
to do,
Right.
you know, or my school.
Sure.
And so
But a
that
whole new perspective on ERs and how they
amazing.
flow and how busy they can get.
And how they have a separate sector for the truly dangerously, you're gonna die in an hour, maybe, maybe not,
Yes.
and then the rest,
Mm-hmm.
and how many people come in, and I
Right.
enjoy talking to the patients.
That's
you know, the
that's
ones that
awesome.
would talk,
Great
and
experience then.
oh, it was just,
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And so then I mean, totally different than what I thought, both of them, the mental
Mhm.
health and the emergency room. But I especially liked the one ride along that is all volunteers. Uh, they have apparently a great endowment because
Yeah.
they have good equipment, they have nice facilities,
It's phenomenal.
you spend money. You
Mhm.
know, I had just purchased a stethoscope for the hard of hearing, you know,
Yes.
because I couldn't hear a thing, and now I can. But
Yes.
and I was telling him about it, and he said, "Oh yeah," the guy, my preceptor said, "I bought one of those too." He's spent the same amount of money I
Right.
did. He said, in the week after that, they gave them to everybody. So all the EMTs got
Oh wow. Very
brand
nice.
new Core 500 Echoes.
So they take care of the volunteers. So that's
Oh
awesome.
man, they do.
Yeah.
And you know, they had people coming in and feeding them and all this
Right.
stuff. So
It sounds like a place I want to actually retire and work at.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they have respect for and all the places had respect for the volunteer,
Yeah.
for us as
So
students.
all the students were received well at your
They
clinical
were
sites.
at all
Okay.
of them. I think the ground had been prepared
Mhm.
thoroughly, and they had been chosen. And there, you know, it wasn't none of them were the big county EMS type that I thought
Mhm.
would, for me, probably not be so good.
Right.
You know,
Right. Because we do like a private service, right?
Yeah.
And they don't get all of the, cool emergency runs that a lot of new EMT students are looking for. But there's value in that, and that you get a chance to actually practice what you've learned
Yes.
with your skills, like vitals and just learning how the
Yeah.
process works in general.
I mean, doing vitals in the back of an ambulance is not
Right.
easy.
It's different than a classroom.
Yeah.
So that's you have an amazing story. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, I know your motivation for taking this was basically you were working at the search and rescue team with the search and rescue, and you wanted to become an EMT so you could offer more,
That's right.
a different type of value to the search and rescue
Right. They kept
team.
telling me I was valuable, but I could tell that
Yeah, they
if I
didn't
was
mean
an
it.
EMT, it would be better.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, and they do great things in this county. So, EMT or not, like there's still search and rescue in itself doesn't require you to be an EMT. So they still, you did have value.
And they're all
Yeah.
volunteers. I like that.
I know. So, as far as this class, did you have any favorite topics that you actually enjoyed studying in depth that you didn't think that you would be intrigued by?
Yes, I did, especially in trauma.
Yeah.
Because I had experience in trauma in the mountains alone,
Right.
and no ambulance, no medicine, just
No
what
help.
you can carry. And so, but I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing as in depth as I learned here. And I thought trauma was fascinating.
Yes.
It's still a difficult subject for me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and because of the depth to which this course takes it. And I enjoy the medical, but
Mm-hmm.
I found that to be, boy, I hope I don't get called upon to do this. You know? Some of the more in-depth
Yeah.
type, you know, distinguishing is it this or that, and they both have the same symptoms.
Right. And trauma is a little bit easier, if you will, like,
I
you
think
know,
it is.
okay, it's bleeding, I need to stop it, versus
Yeah.
medical is my stomach hurts. Okay, well, why? Like, we
Yeah.
got to figure out what's going on. So it takes a little bit of more of a thought process.
And I like
And
that
trauma.
analysis, learning that analysis. I
Yes.
really learned a lot about the heart, how the blood
Right.
actually goes through,
Mhm.
and, you know, things.
Yep.
Hollow organs, solid organs. I mean,
Okay.
it was the whole reason I took this course is I want a good basic medical education.
Right.
I don't know. I've been doing
Right.
stuff that and what fascinated me the most, it sounds maybe oversimplified, silly, but CPR and AED.
Yeah.
This course, and I've taken it every 2 years for the last, well, 8 years, solid every two, but years before that. And I've taken it and I can do it, but I don't know the contraindications. I don't know. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do.
Or why you're doing it.
Or
what's
why,
going
and what's
on.
happening
Yeah.
when I get off the chest and give it a moment, you know, to refill, and you're actually pumping.
Right.
You know, it's like siphoning gas out of somebody's car.
You're the heartbeat. Yes.
Yeah, and then you hear the heartbeat. I don't, you know, I've talked to people about who've done a lot of it in my prior last career, and you know, a lot of people don't come back. You know?
Right. No.
And so this course taught me, if they do, what you do.
Right.
And I never knew that. You know?
Yeah, that's kind of an important piece
That's
of
very
it.
important.
Yeah,
I don't want to bring them back and kill them.
Right.
I wanna,
Right. You
you
got to
know.
make sure that they stay alive, right?
Yeah, and the CPR, AED, and then it carried through in other areas like trauma, and it carried through in medical, it
Sure.
carried through. So the course itself,
So did it surpass your expectations?
yes,
or
it did.
okay.
I couldn't believe the detail to which
Okay.
this course went in explaining the body parts and what happens and how they interact, the physiology.
How do you feel about the platform it was delivered on? So you had options, right?
You did, and I like the platform because for each chapter there were like 6 or 8 things you could do. And so I would download the lecture outline, and I would take all the extra tests you could take and the flashcards, and I knew that because of my age, I need to study harder than anybody else, you know. And
Just for retention purposes.
for
Is that what you,
retention, yeah, I can memorize it, but
Right.
you know, 2 weeks later,
Right.
my you know, I got 60% of it instead of the old 80 or 90% I used to.
Right.
So. And so I have to study harder, and that's what it takes. And it had those in every chapter. I got to do the inaction part. I got to do the PowerPoint. I thought the PowerPoint was very good.
Okay.
In particular, because especially it had almost 10 questions at the end of each one.
Yes. So it offers different, like there's audio, or you can use your student handbook, the actual manual.
Yeah.
You can use PowerPoint. There's videos. So like, I feel like this platform delivers all options for all different types of learners, right?
Yeah.
So some people just like audio.
What you're strong at learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Did you feel like the class size was appropriate?
Well, that's the reason I chose this school.
Okay.
Is, I don't want to be in a class of 20 to 40. And I think it's easy, having spent, you know, a lot of time at school.
Right.
8 years in college. So you can get in a big class, isolate yourself directly because you want to or not, become isolated, and then not get the full measure of the class. Well, if you're in a small class with like 10 students, you can't hide from the teacher.
Right. You can try.
And you can begin to know and appreciate your classmates. And it came down to 5 near the end of the class, and I think we all trust each other to listen enough when someone speaks and to learn from each other.
I like that.
And I think that you're not going to get that in a class of 30.
Well, that was one of the things that we were very, very picky about, and wanted to make sure we held to the 10-to-1 ratio, because we want to make sure that you guys get the time you need with the instructor, with the skills, with whatever it is that comes up. It's a much more manageable on a 10-to-1 scale than a 30-to-1 scale. And you know, you have access to the instructor through email, through their phone, and then you have access to the program director as well. So like,
you do. I mean, I was amazed that I could contact you two.
Didn't matter what time.
I mean, sometimes I wasn't sure of dates and times and stuff like that.
Sure, right. But we're here, our entire goal is to make you be as a successful EMT as possible, right? Well, not just a successful EMT, but a successful student getting to that point as well.
Yeah. So, well, like the time, you probably don't remember, but I was struggling with CPR on a baby.
Okay.
So I'm over there, we're in the room here, and I've got the baby in my hands, and I'm trying to figure it out. And one of the reasons I want to take this course is my wife and I are helping raise a 2.5-year-old and a 2-month-old. So I need to know this pediatric stuff. You know? Yes. And so I'm trying to get this down, and I, of course, had been exposed to it before. I had a couple funny stories I told you about, but I couldn't get it. I didn't feel like I could do it under stress and pressure and time, limited time. Sure. And so you're right there in front of me, and you're watching me doing all these things not quite right, and you're not saying a thing. And I said, I need some help here. And she said, well, I can help you with this. Let me show you it. Boom, 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 you did it. And I said, whoa, can you do that again? You can't do that with a class of 40. Exactly. And I'm talking to one of the directors of the program, who, they are EMTs, and they do, and they teach this all the time. And so I just finally got it, you know. And that's awesome. To me, that's particularly important. Right. And Rick and I are very passionate about quality education and sending you guys out the door, being comfortable with what you've learned. And you're never going to walk out this door as an EMT and be ready to go knowing all things. A lot of what you learn as an EMT is going to be actually on the job. Because the classroom, as you know from being an attorney, you don't learn everything in school. But you should have at least a baseline of knowledge. That's right. To get started and be effective. And then the most important part of that is when you walk out the doors to be open-minded enough to learn everything else, right? So I remember walking out of EMT school in 1995 thinking, I'm ready to go. And then on my first shift, I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing, right? Like I was terrified. So it is very scary to work that first shift. But you know what? I know. I'm going to feel that. Kind of like when you were, I'm sure your first case as an attorney, you're and you're standing in front of a lot of people, right? Expected to know your job. And as an EMS worker, you're out in the public and you are watched. Oh, yeah. Right? Especially more now than ever. So it can be a little intimidating. So we're here to try to give you confidence, skills, a skill set, at least to start with, right? But also we will be here after your first shift for you to walk through that door and say, hey, this is what happened. I don't know about this. I need somebody to talk to. And I think that kind of sets us apart too. Oh yeah, you're not going to get that in a college setting. Yeah, so we're still here, from here until we retire. If we retire like you retire, I guess we'll never retire. So there's that. But also, it came to me while you were talking that each one of you, the instructor and you two leaders of the business, have told us over and over, there's one thing about learning by the book. That's what you're going to be tested on.
Right.
There are other ways that you're going to find people handle the same situation, and it's different.
Right.
So you told us that from the beginning, especially the instructor,
Mm-hmm.
that it's different. So
Mm-hmm.
that's good. And because some of my buddies in search and rescue had said, well, you go get the EMT and then we'll teach you how to be an EMT. You know?
Right, right.
And so,
Because there's a national registry level of expectation that you have to have.
that's great.
Yep.
You have to have that foundation.
You do.
Yeah.
And so as far as the, so we kind of touched on the fact that you feel like you had the support that you needed, right? Through the instructors or through Rick or I, whoever it might be. As far as your actual skills, hands-on experience in here, did you feel it was effective? Did you feel it was enough? Do you think that, we try to do real life scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's part of our mass casualty incident training. So think about all your skills in here, some scenarios, the MCI. Do you feel like that was sufficient?
I do. I think as a visual on-hands
Mm-hmm.
learner, I've read a lot of books and I've read,
I'm sure.
but and I learn a lot from a book. But I think the mass casualty incident all day there was very, very important. That when we took it near the end of the class was important because we actually had something to work with within ourselves.
Right.
And we were being watched. It's funny, there was nobody else out there on that tarp except the patient and I, or
Mm-hmm.
my partner.
You forgot about everybody else.
They weren't there.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And so
yeah.
that can happen if you focus.
Yeah.
And but I think as far as the skills go, you can't get enough.
Yeah.
And if I could, and I like the variety. I like the National Register requirement sheets. You gave us these, and you said you need to know these.
Right.
And so I heard you say it, and I didn't do it for a while, a couple of weeks, and then I started jumping on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, you know what the great thing about this is? Especially the medical or the trauma?
Yeah.
It steps me through everything I have to do anyway. So I started making my own handwritten.
Yeah.
And then I would type it, and then I'd do another handwritten 3 days
Memory,
later.
right? Like by doing that, yeah.
And so I learned, all the acronym tests, the OPQRST, which of course I missed 3 of those, but sample and
BSI and safe.
Glasgow Coma,
Yeah.
But and so I think that certainly the more of those we could practice on helps.
Yeah.
I think the equipment sometimes, I can't imagine what it's like in a class of 30. If you've got a suction machine, how many do they have? 10?
Right.
Maybe they don't think they have 30.
Yeah,
But
I don't know.
if you don't learn how to turn it on, I mean,
it's simple, right?
That's a little switch. It's
know.
not evident. You have to reach down inside the bag on the side and turn the thing on.
Right.
So
having your actual hands-on equipment that you're going to use on the street.
Yeah.
From checking the battery, checking where do you turn it on? Like all those little things matter, and so that's one thing that we want to make sure every student gets an opportunity to do those things and touch every single piece of equipment or see it or how does this work. So hopefully we've met that expectation.
You did, and I think you had a good mix of that. And it wouldn't have bothered me if you did it from day one. You did stuff, but really in day one you don't know anything. So it's until you've been here about chapter 8, 7. It's probably best not to waste your time.
And you probably figured out too. Each class builds on the next.
Oh yeah.
So as we're building the foundation and we build up,
I got that quickly.
Yes, that's the whole point, right? Like you have to have a foundation.
Yeah.
So by building on that, we're hoping that you recall, okay, I learned this here, so now this is why this is like this and why I have to do that.
Yeah, especially I found with nitroglycerin and glucose. Sometimes it's contraindicated. Did I know
so
that
like you
before I
can't
took
give
this
nitro,
class?
right? Like when can you give it? When should on both accounts,
and why
right?
not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens if I actually do give it and I
Yeah.
shouldn't have?
Yeah.
And can I fix that?
Yeah, right, right.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about if you had to, well, you actually said you looked at, other options for
I did.
schools and that sort of thing.
And I asked other EMTs,
Okay.
and a lot of them were all proud of their own school.
Well,
But
sure. Yeah.
that wasn't what I was looking for when I was talking. I wasn't looking for loyalty. I wasn't looking for they thought their school did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for what did you learn, and
Mm-hmm.
what opportunities did it give you.
Right.
And I really think the big difference was with this school, you're going to go to the mental health facility. You're going to go to private places. You're not going to stick with the, horrible car wreck or bus overturn
And just see that
and just
all
see
the
that.
time.
And
Right.
I've seen, I've been in the mountains with people
Sure.
that, they're in bad shape,
Yeah.
get kicked in the head by a horse.
Well, there's your trauma that you
Yeah.
got to
got
deal with
exposed
that.
to a lot of trauma.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things you and I talked about too was the with the platform that we use for your material. You had told me that if you were to tell any other future student, and maybe even people, the students that are in currently, but any future student, to do what with that work?
Okay. I discovered early on there's this basket of questions, 640, 50 questions. And I'm thinking at the beginning, wow, that's a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
they're in categories. So if you want to
Mm-hmm.
learn airway, you want to learn medical trauma, OBGYN,
Mm-hmm.
operations, they test you far differently than the test you took at the end of each chapter.
Right.
Because they really make you analyze and think. And so I took every single one of those, and it took a while and it was difficult. And I went over each question at least 3 times, whether I got it right or not.
Right.
And so I just set up a process. And I would encourage the students to take,
Yes.
when you're on chapter, whatever it was for airways, 7 or whatever, take the airway test.
Right.
And then take the airway test again.
Right.
And then when you get to the medical, you finish your 4 or 5 chapters on medical, take that medical. But there are also quizzes or exams that cover those same subjects in that fashion. And but these are different. These are different questions, and they help me a lot because when I took them, I took the tutorial mode. So there's 2 modes. One, right or wrong, we don't tell you why you're wrong.
Yes.
The other is, if you get the tutorial mode, at the bottom there's a whole paragraph that explains why that one's right. And I was just studying one last night, and it said, and then after, and it had nothing to do with the question, after that you would do this, And I thought, wow, I need to know that.
That's what you wanted to know, right? Yeah.
So that's in those tests. You're going to get stuff. And then it explains that helps me understand these other things that I know how to do, but I didn't know to do.
You talked a little bit about that on your engineer days, like it helped you like really look into the how and why and what and when and
That's why I studied
it,
engineering.
so,
After you get through it was a 5-year bachelor's degree, And so after you get through, you know how things work.
Yes.
And
that's kind of with medicine.
And that's what this course does.
Yeah. So would you agree that you get out of this course what you put into it?
Oh, you do. You have to put a lot more in than is required.
Yes. So that's one of the things I tell them.
Yeah, you've got to do the extra. You've got to do the handwritten. What's my whole series of maximum steps I would need to take?
Yeah.
And our teacher was good about that. He says he learned when he was in paramedic school that with the different medicines, every morning he got up, he did a different medicine and why and all this stuff. And so I said, well, I can apply that to this.
Yeah, for sure. And so I actually am, well, thank you for doing this. You have so much valuable insight just with what your history is and then what you're doing now with the EMT program and why you're doing it and what you've learned, and you are the true testament of never stop learning. So I have mad respect for you for that, because it really, well, it's keeping you young.
It is, and
Right?
you have to do that.
Yes.
And
Yep.
I've been blessed with recovering from failures, recovering from, not real failures, but I mean, recovering from not quite doing it right
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've been given so many opportunities to not stray
But I mean,
in
failure
school.
and not doing it right
Yeah.
are all life lessons to figure out,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
then what does work,
That's right.
right? So,
And a big lesson that was reiterated in this school is first of all, you always tell the truth. You have to do that because
yes.
that's data, and people need data
Right.
after you,
Right. Right.
So you gather data and it's okay if you don't know, say so. And I was riding one of the ambulances and the guy says, can you do a blood pressure for me and hands me a stethoscope? Well,
Yes.
and so I tried to do it, and I said, I can't get it. And so the paramedic comes around in the ambulance, and he says, let me show you a trick. And so I learned to do the pulse,
Mm-hmm. The palpable blood pressure.
systolic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in class, lo and behold, they're telling me the same thing.
Right.
Rick, one of the directors of the program is saying, hey, yeah. And
so practice that a little bit more, right?
Yeah. So I do that. I mean, half the ones every day we did them for a while.
Right.
And half of mine I did pulse because
Right.
I could be in a position where I don't have my
Sure.
Your
super nice
duper,
little Well, even if you are someone who doesn't wear hearing aids, and you're in the back of the ambulance and lights and sirens and noise and whatever, if you have difficulty, that's a skill that's good for everybody to know as well.
So. Yeah, I think that's very important, and it's so clear.
Yeah.
And you can actually see the bump on the dial.
Yep. Our clinical sites, I feel like our clinical sites have been excellent. As far as an extension of your education.
Yes.
You weren't just there as a student to observe, like they legitimately wanted you to continue that education in each one of them and learn something valuable out of that, and even do something, right? Like do some skills. So I think that's fantastic.
Well, they've been primed. I mean, you primed them. And then I read the sheet on what they're going to score me by, and so I'm reading the first 2 or 3 pages, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I got that. And then I read the last page that only had a little bit on it, and it says, how well did this student help to clean up and get ready for the next patient? And that was so important because I would not have known to do that. To an extent, you want to stand back because I knew they had to leave when they're washing. They have to leave it glistening for a minute or two, and it's on the bottle, tells you why and how, and so I didn't want to bother them doing it right,
But that's a life lesson too. Like, being an EMT is great, working in EMS, whatever, doing all the cool stuff, but part of the job is at the end of your day, and my mom actually taught me this at a very young age, is you leave something the way you found it or better. And so part of our job as an EMS worker is to take care of our equipment and put things back. Everybody would love to just go in and play and go home, but that's not just the whole job. And so that's actually something that a lot of students have learned, like, oh wow, it's more than just taking care of patients, right? You're also taking care of your equipment.
Well, you all have done it. And so I remember one thing, and you told us, get there early.
Yes.
If your shift starts at 6, get there at 5.
If you're on time, you're late.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
If you're on time, you're late. And if you're not early, you're late, And so get there real early, because at 10 to 6, somebody's been on for 12 hours. They don't want to take that call.
Right.
And you can be there and be ready to go.
That's right.
And so you told us that. And then I'm at one of the runs, and I asked, because I always show up early,
right.
But I asked my EMT preceptor, who I was working with all day, I said, what time do you get here? And he gave me the exact, so I learned it in school, I took it to heart, and I fully understood it all of a sudden, as soon as you told me. Right. And then I got it repeated in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And so I saw where these people want to help each other. So
Yes.
the person scheduled for the 6 hours or the 12 hours before has got a tough job near the end of it.
Right.
And so the next team coming on wants to take care of their compatriots.
Yes.
Know?
Yeah.
And so
we're all there for the same.
you're all part of a big team.
Absolutely. And, you know, some of those lessons that we teach in our school is not in national registry.
Oh, no.
So that's more like a personal touch of trying to make
Right.
them a better student, a better EMS worker, a better person, you
Right.
know, try to help them gain these life skills that are going to make just as much difference.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then they can pass it on to the next generation. And so we, very thankful for you, Russ. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And do you have any final words on future EMT students that would like to join our school?
I think you have to look at what kind of an education you want to get, because you can get an education at A, B, C, and if it's important to you, as it was to me, to have small classes, if it's important to have a family atmosphere, I mean, all of a sudden you become, not all of a sudden, but over time, you become a big family.
Right.
You know, you're walking into this little family that's, you know, the people that are running the place, and then you become part of it. And it's really interesting because, like I said, I've been to a lot of classes, you know, and you don't become a unit. And so I think you've got to look around.
Yeah, you said you sat in a class and your lecture's like 600 or something?
600.
600, yeah.
Yeah, that was economics and engineering school.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good time at all.
The way they took, they look at the number on the back of the seat. If they can read it, you're absent, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. If you're absent here, we're calling to make sure you're okay, right?
Yeah. I had to leave early one day, and I thought, man, I can't leave. You know, my wife's in danger. And
it was kind of important.
I got up and got permission.
Yes.
But I wasn't going to get up and walk out.
Right. Yeah. But I suppose if you did there in those lectures, they wouldn't even know you're gone.
Yeah. And plus, you're part of a unit.
Yes.
You know, if the leg decides to go a different way than the rest of the body, or maybe the toe, I'm just the toe.
Right.
But it could be a problem.
Yeah. And we're going to find out what's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I will, that's all I have. And thank you again for taking the time to do this. And in about probably, 3 weeks, I'll be posting on social media that you have passed your national registry.
I hope so.
Absolutely. Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
All right.